Today we're talking about finding that clean point of return, that literal second in time before a threat actor first touches your network. Finding the clean point of return can easily become one of the most stressful parts for an incident commander. Another way to think about this is a digital version of the floor is lava. But in this version, the floor is your entire server rack, and the lava, that's the ransomware hiding in your code, waiting to melt your recovery efforts the moment you flip the switch. Imagine you've been hit. Files are encrypted with weird file extensions, ransomware notes are everywhere, and your backups are really your only hope to a safe return. But here's the nightmare. What if your backups are infected or encrypted too? Your backup strategy, the backup confidentiality, availability, and integrity will determine your outcome of a ransomware attack. This is one of the main reasons ransomware groups will also try to affect your backups. Now let's be clear. If a ransomware threat actor is able to get onto your network and elevate their privileges to possibly obtain domain admin credentials, you will likely face some damage and data loss. But your backup strategy will determine whether you'll be able to restore. More frequent backups and longer data retentions will have a cost. As a business leader, you need, however, to calculate ideally upfront what your acceptable data loss is going to be. Usually user endpoints, for example, might get excluded from backups as long as the users store their critical and sensitive data on a centralized and backed up system that will do a daily or maybe even hourly snapshot to minimize the data loss. In addition, if there has been any data exfiltration, while you might still be able to restore your systems and your data, you still need to deal with the data loss from a brand and reputation perspective if a threat actor group publishes your data at some point. Now, most people think that recovery is simple, straightforward, and will always work from the first attempt, just to restore yesterday's data, right? Unfortunately, in practice, it's rarely that easy. Among other things, we have to account for the dwell time. This is the period that a hacker sits silently onto your system before they actually strike. It could be hours, days, or sometimes even weeks, or in the case of state-sponsored attacks, even longer. If you restore to a point after they've gained access, you aren't recovering, you're just inviting them back to the party. The catch? Well, in a large-scale attack, analyzing the data to find that clean point of return can take several days, if not a week or two. Until then, you're stuck in a holding pattern while the clock is ticking. Let's start with giving you an example of a first case study, an example of a whack-a-mole game in one of the engagements I worked. I once worked with a customer who had a compromised WordPress site. They had no idea when the breach actually occurred. We suspected vulnerable WordPress plugins, but the customer said that they were all patched to the latest versions. Every time the customer restored the site, it got reinfected within hours. It was like a game of digital whack-a-mole. We realized that finding a clean backup wasn't the answer because the door was actually still unlocked. Standard forensics in this case didn't cut it. We had to pivot and run a vulnerability assessment, basically a digital home inspection, to find the specific hole the hackers were using. Only after we patched the broken window in the code could the customer finally safely stay online again. A second interesting case I would like to talk about is Active Directory. Things get even more complex with Active Directory, the keys to the kingdom system that manages every user and computer in your company. When this is compromised, you can't just hit undo. Over decades, small configuration changes build up like old messy wiring in a house. Hackers love this because it creates hidden, easy escalation paths to obtain privileged credentials. Unfortunately, remediating Active Directory isn't a simple restore. It's a surgical process. You analyze and scrub the actual Active Directory database. You then inject that clean data onto a fresh domain controller in a safe, isolated space. And then you reset every single password in the company with a Kerberos ticket reset twice. This is why major outages last longer Every other system in your company relies basically on these keys to the kingdom systems to properly work. The last item that I want to mention for today is the due diligence, the final step after the restoration process. Once you finally restore to that clean point of return, your job isn't really over. You must perform due diligence. Think of it like clearing a house after a burglary. Even when you've replaced the locks, you still need to check under the beds. First, scan everything. Run deep antivirus scans on all restored user data. Second, monitor. Watch like a hawk for any attempts for the threat actor to come back in. Remember, if you leave an entry door open, the likelihood of a threat actor returning through that same entry door is real. And finally, patch. Ensure every system is updated to the latest version. After that, verify that the latest patches have been installed and are functioning as expected. Don't just trust that your backups are good enough. Run vulnerability scans and port scans to ensure that everything and every single door is locked tight. If you enjoyed the video of today, please leave a comment or a like, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.